All right, is everybody ready? I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, September 25th meeting of the City of Monona City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll? Who's the clerk? Is that Brian?
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Alder.
Here.
Alder Poole.
Here.
Alder Kitzer.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Thomas. Alder Moore is excused.
Yes. Okay, tonight we are here to finish the review and discussion of the 2020-2024 capital improvements program and 2020 capital borrowing. So first up is Mark, who will give an overview. I would like everyone to kind of speak up. I watched last week's presentation over the weekend, and there were a couple of people I couldn't hear what they were saying, so I guess we don't have mics this time, but hopefully.
Even more so.
Even more so, yes, speak up.
All right, well, I'm just going to start and do a presentation here on 2020 capital. Before I get started, I'm going to start with the numbers and then kind of some other stuff after that, the whys and what we're spending our money on. But one of the first things we did when we started the 2020 budget, the 2020 to 2024 capital improvement plan, was we set a goal with the department heads. We wanted, $2 million is what we were shooting for. Between two, we kind of knew we thought we'd go to 2.5. Would kind of be our max, what we wanted to. The reason for that, one of our ultimate goal is the public safety building. To do that, we want to make sure we keep our costs down with our borrowing, because when the public safety building comes on, it's going to be a larger dollar amount. So that was the goal, to kind of level payments and kind of level what we're borrowing here for a little bit, so we can get that public safety building, because that's kind of the number one priority that we were doing our review, is what we thought. So that's kind of the ultimate what our strategies was, some of these cuts and stuff like that is for that reason. Just kind of the legal debt limit. So for the state of Wisconsin, you can borrow up to 5% of your equalized value. And our equalized value, which just came out in August, is $1,386,302,300 is what our equalized value is. At the end of the year, our outstanding debt will be $48,765,000. So we have principal payments we'll pay in 2020. What they do is they deduct that when they're looking at the levy limit, the debt limit. So it gives us our net debt outstanding of $42,800,000. So our legal capacity is 5%. Equalized value is the 5% of the 1.3 billion. So that's $69,315,115. So it gives us an unused margin of indebtedness of $26,500,000. So which is 38% is unused legal debt capacity. And so of that 48,765, the second line down, is what is at the end of 2031, at the end of the year 2019. This is general obligation debt, which is subject to a couple things. The city debt is, of that $48 million, 23 million. That is subject to your debt service payments. That's when your tax bills. That's the debt service payments. These are the principal payments total. So TIF 4 through TIF 9, we borrow with GO debt on some of these. And that's breaking it down, and that's paid by your tax increment. So the taxpayers technically do not pay that. That's paid by the increment that's generated from these TIFs that will be paid down. Storm is paid by the stormwater and sewer. And we do borrow sometimes based on the size. We don't use revenue debts if it's a small borrowing, because it doesn't make sense to use revenue debt. So these are the totals there for that. We do have other debt too. They're called revenue bonds. A lot of with utility, with sewer, water, and we also have bands or revenue bands. They're mainly short-term notes for the revenue bands, which is the two TIF projects, and then the revenue bonds is the sewer and water. they have higher interest rates using them than using GEO. But they also are not part of the debt limit. TIF 9, of course, we're just starting with River Place. So we'll eventually roll that into long-term debt here pretty soon. So if you kind of break up all the debt, the revenue bonds, the bands, and the general obligation, you can see how the debt's broken out. 53% of it's related to TIF, TIF-related debt, which will be paid by the increment. 33 is the general, which is paid by the debt service limit. And the utilities is revenues, and that's paid by the user rate structure. And here's some future debt payments over the next 7 years. We will be paying some large payments here pretty soon in our TIF 4, or TIF 5, I mean. I will start making large payments in there. So that's, a lot of it's, I think we're paying about $1 million here pretty soon in TIF 5. So there's going to be some higher debt payments, but a lot of that is related to the TIFs. So you can kind of see here, we're breaking it down by each principal payments over the next 7 years, what we're paying. So this is kind of on page 1 of your book, if you have it, that'd be easier to see. So this kind of shows in 2020, the first line, 1 year, we borrow capital projects every year, once a year. So the general obligation, the general fund, which is the general borrowing, is 2.5 is what our goal was and what we hit. We did use fund balance of the general fund balance. We used 192,000 to balance it. There is going to be some sewer debt, almost 500,000, 482,000. There's other revenues that we don't need to borrow for. Cable we don't borrow for either, so that's 3.5. And then we get to the water and sewer, which we're going to use revenue bonds. So the water and sewer combined is almost $2 million. And you can see kind of based on the 5-year plan what's going to be happening here, especially if you look at the general borrowings. You can see what's going on. 23 is a big year, but there's a lot of changes we're looking at for 2023. Based on that capacity, we do all the borrowings. We'll have about 20 million left for 2020 to use, and 2021 about 25 million, and so on down the line, kind of the last line, how much the capacity we would have. And kind of looking at those, what we have for capacity, kind of things we're kind of looking at, what we want capacity is the public safety building, number 1, you know, the land purchase, and then the actual building. So we need capacity for that. And if there's any other TIF agreements, if there's any other any other projects that come through, then we might need money for TIF project, TIF agreements, just future capital projects. And then in case there's an emergency that we need it, we need money on hand. Here's kind of what we borrowed over the last, what was that, 7 years. You know, 2013, I think it was kind of last year, Monona Drive, and then we leveled off a little bit. In 2019, there was $6 million there. You know, part of that's the Bridge Road, and portion of that is also part of the riverfront projects. So not all of it's just general obligation. I mean, general. A lot of it's split between TIF and general, and there's some actually water utility there. So in the 2020 capital budget, here's just some major items that we have, and I think we talked about some of these already. I missed City Hall, but you know, the library HVAC project, you know, it's 282,000. Dispatch radio system upgrade, 105,000. McKenna Road, you know, 1.7. Monona Drive reconstruction, 400,000. This was committed to, and this was when we were doing the analysis. We had to do this project and kind of McKenna. So balance everything else was kind of hard based on just those 2 projects. So that was kind of things that, and we were committed to doing Monona Drive, and that's, Dan will get into that. That's just from the Monona ramp to the stop sign. bridge replacements, ash tree removals, the water meter upgrades, over 2 years, split it in half, 50-50. With that, there will be some additional operating costs involved with that once we get that up and running. And also one of the things we'll look into when we get that up and running is going to monthly billing and changing from cubic units to gallons. So that'll be something we'll be looking at and working with the Public Works to get that changed. The sewer and industrial drive sewer, and then kind of the Woodland Park parking lot are kind of the big items, ticket items on here. Again, kind of our goal was to keep the borrowing down to $2 million to 2.5. We did hit that at 2.5. We did use some fund balance. The general fund balance, 192,000. EMS fund balance, we talked about those projects, 8,000. In the library fund balance, we put in here at 15,000. And then we are going to do a budget amendment because we took out the senior. We should have actually left it in there. We are going to use fund balance on that. The overall fund balance for the EMS, I wrote it down today and I forgot to bring it. I believe it's around 150,000 or maybe 160,000 we have in fund balance for that. And then the library fund, we have 130,000 in fund balance. And then the senior center donation fund balance, we have $48,000. So that was the reason why we're using these fund balances. Is one of our goals. So there's changes that were made from we took the community budgets and then we sat down, each department sat down with myself, Brian, and the mayor, and we made changes. A couple things we added that were not part of any committee budgets were anti-idling pilot program and the rapid flash beacon program over by Schluter Park. There was some changes we took out. These kind of the bigger ones. We did split the water meter upgrade over 2 years. They initially had it in for 1 year. The lift station, moved that back a year. Husker Park, removed that electric vehicle. We moved that back 1 year, and the Winnequa South parking lot design, we removed that. And I know the park stuff we kind of talked about at the last meeting. And also, if you want to look at the changes, I know we talked about last meeting, it's on page 2 of all the changes in detail. You know, things are, you know, like I said, we're thinking about is the public safety building. You know, that's kind of the number one thing. Any unknown expenses that could come in the future, and you know, reduce the borrowing for future projects like public safety and any future TIF projects. There is some impact on the utility rates. When we're doing the meter upgrades and some of the other stuff in the meters, in the water utility, we will need to do a full-blown rate case with that, just again, some reasons we talked about with changing the monthly billing, changing it to gallons, and just in general the amount of money that we are borrowing in the water utility. Sewer is projected to be about a 20% increase. 12% is actually just from Madison Metro. What we're finding in the utilities is actually it's 10%, but because our usage is going down, and also because a lot of I&I, which we have for the future, to fix the I&I. In the sewer, we're actually, when it's a 10%, we should be adding on another 2% to make up for that I&I. And the other portion is related to our capital costs. And then stormwater we'll have another 8 to 10% increase in the rates. And that actually relates to the operating too at the same time, so we'll be talking about that at the operating. Things about we have in the budget right now for the future. Some big ticket items. Again, we'll go through the whole process again. But there's, you know, the HVAC projects over the next couple of years, South Winnequa Road, Stonebridge, Gateway Green, Stormwater, 3 Meadow Parks. I guess I got Stonebridge in there twice. 20 Wather Street reconstruction, that whole area over there. Broadway Road reconstruction with the county, and then the Winnequa Husker Park. So that's kind of all I have. Questions?
Anybody?
Yeah, I've got a couple. The debt capacity numbers, those are based on the new
Yes.
equalized values that came out?
Yeah,
The ones in our book are those are based on that too?
yeah.
Okay. After we use the 192,000 in fund balance, so do you know about how much we'll have left, or what percentage of the general budget, general fund that would be?
Yeah, I was looking at the operating budget today. Yeah, 500,000 is kind of where we're over right now, as far as additional.
Above the 20%.
20%, so it brings it down to 300,000 roughly.
Like you said, it was at about 28% in the
Yeah.
operating budget.
Yeah.
Doug, you have anything else?
I don't
or
think so.
Anybody?
Before we get started with this, we kind of had some switches because of Brian had emergency, and then Brad had to do changes schedule around. So Will's kind of going to go first, and then Wally, and then Ryan. That's okay.
All right. Will, you're up.
Just want to say.
I'll sit right here.
Will is on
Since we're gonna do some better, I'm gonna move the camera.
page
So Will's the very
120.
last. So as far as the media is concerned, we do use, it's paid by franchise fees. So it is included in this 2020 operating budget number too, currently right now. So it starts on page 120, 128.
Okay. So if we, I guess I'll just start in. It's pretty self-explanatory, as you can see. The video computer updates are really just a new computer for video editing. Up until this point, we've been building our own computers because we have the staff to be able to do that. But with that always comes some challenges. Nothing's ever exactly right. They work well. They're cheaper than buying, a Mac, which is what we need. That's what 98% of the media world uses, just because they're stable. So this year we're going to make the jump and buy a Mac, so we're not always fixing things. The radio computer, the second one, which is 2000, that needs some updates just to have some better recording capabilities. We're always having to record and then adjust the recording afterwards because it wasn't loud enough or it just didn't work the way we need to. So I need to figure that out and get some other equipment that's going to make it so we just record and we're done. We're not doing extra work afterwards. We also need a couple new chairs in there, along with a new interface in the outer studio, which is kind of the radio station updates, your third item. For volunteer ease of use, I guess it would be. So the volunteers who do music programs, they all most of them like to record their show. So one would record from 6 to 7, and then they would kind of move out of the way for the next show, which comes from 7 to 8 at night, let's say. Well, in the switchover, the one person has to stop their recording of their show, and the other person has to start their recording, but they got to do it in time before the shows start, and they want to save it, and that takes a while. So I just need to get some additional equipment, possibly just another smaller computer that can record two things at once. So one person can start recording their show while the other one ends theirs, so I don't have to continue to get emails about can't we have two things recording at once. And they'll appreciate that, and it'll be easier for everybody. The fourth item is a remote video switcher. So if we would have had more time this evening, for instance, we could have grabbed that and it would have been very quick. We could have just brought this, right now we use basically rack mounted switcher, so you put it in the rack just like you see a network switch, and then everything runs into that and then it runs off a computer. Well, this is a video switcher that's all in one, just like you see on like NBC football and stuff where they show behind the scenes and they get this huge board. Well, this is a smaller one, but we can just grab it, put it down, plug the cameras in, and go. Not trying that we don't really need a network connection to make everything work. It's a little easier. Obviously, if we wanted to stream live, we'd always need a network connection. So it's just gonna be a little easier for remote capabilities such as a quick change like this, maybe not this quick, but if we'd have known, say, this afternoon, we could have planned for it. Football games, basketball games, concerts in the park, things like that. It's gonna make it a little easier. Again, also making it easier to get there, to switch the cameras in real time, then with takeoff time in the back end, having to do all the editing and things, as long as the switching between cameras during the event was good and worked out well, we wouldn't have to edit at the end, again, saving ourselves time, and we can move on to other things. And then the last one is just a new camera. These cameras are working on almost 6 years old now. About the time that January rolls around, they'll be a few months shy of 6 years old. So you can see one of them's duct taped there. It took a digger. So they need to start recycling through. We just need to get a new one in, and 21, I'll have another one in there, perhaps. We'll see what happens with the school district. Those are the main.
Questions, anybody? Andrew?
Do you still have the relationship with that technical college that you bought some equipment from, or were they shutting down the program and that's why they were selling the equipment?
Yep,
Oh.
That's why we got such a good deal. However, if anybody can find the person who owns that building, I've been told there is a lot of equipment still in there, just sitting there. And nobody's using the building, and it's somebody who lives in Chicago who owns the building, and my guess is they're probably just gonna one day decide to clean it out, and there's a lot of stuff just in there they never got rid of.
Can you send me the address of the building?
Yeah,
Is it Madison Media Institute?
yeah,
Yeah.
I will.
Other questions? Well, some of their funding, I know a lot of it is from the franchise fees, but some is from the school district, gives you money for equipment also.
Right, so this year will also be, in fact, I should do that next week. We'll be billing the school district for $5,000 of that Madison Media Institute equipment that we bought last year. And that'll be the last installment for them. And then next year we'll have, Dan Olson, superintendent, didn't put an exact number on it, but we'll have right around $5,000 for updates as well for equipment. So that's why I say, depending where that lands and where our equipment is, 2021 proposal could be a little different than I have it here.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, Mark, what did you say?
Wally.
Wally?
Where's your permit?
Still room for engineering.
Is there any way we can turn this air conditioning up or something? It's freezing in here. And it's coming right here.
Yeah, well, it's a login program, and the guy who has access is after Wally.
Okay. So are we on page 29?
Yeah, page 29.
Oh, no. Page 29. Of course not. Okay, so for law enforcement for 2020 projects, I'll just kind of breeze through it as quickly as possible. Basically, we're just purchasing one squad car. This would not be a replacement car. This would be an additional car to the fleet. Several years ago, well, when we started the K-9 unit, we dedicated one of our marked cars to the K-9 unit, so we can down that squad whenever that car is not working. So that's one police car, and we'd be getting another hybrid. The hybrid list price, this one that we ordered that we're still waiting on, was $39,390. With 3% increase, it's probably going to be around 40. So we're asking for $55,000 for the entire project. That would include the purchase of the car, striping, installation of new equipment, and exterior markings. Whenever you build a new car, it's much more expensive. Next item is
Chief, would that always be out on the road, or do we have garage space for that, or where would that be stored?
it'll be somewhere on the campus here.
Okay.
We don't, a lot of times, we only have room for 2, 4, 6 cars. So there's really only 4 spaces for marked cars. So it'll either be in the parking lot or being driven. One squad
Sorry,
video.
just for education, what's the standard life of a new squad once we purchase it? 2?
They'd probably go, probably about 4, we try to push them 4 or 5 years. Once they start getting around 100,000 miles, they start experiencing a lot of issues.
Have you actually, you're still waiting for the first hybrid?
Yeah, we ordered it in March, and it takes 6 months. So sometime between September 15th and October 15th is supposed to come in. So we're still waiting for it. Okay, so that price does not include radios, radar, video, laptops, docking stations, printer, and modem. Those are all additional items that are in this budget. So this car is more expensive because we're starting from scratch with all new equipment. It doesn't have a siren, it doesn't have a light bar. These are all items that would have to be purchased for this car. The next item would be a squad video system for that car. The next item are some mobile radio replacements. So we're buying two radios that would go in that new car, and then we need a 3rd radio for one of our existing cars that we actually have a loaner that's in it right now from the city of Madison. So we need 3 new mobile radios. The next item would be a squad laptop and modems, and that would be going into the new car. Next item is portable radio replacement. We have 3 portable radios that have reached the end of their lifespan. They're different from the standard radio we use. And then with an additional officer, we're down a radio, so we don't have a spare, so we're asking to purchase 4 new portable radios. And those would all be Motorola Apex radios that would work with our radio system. The next item would be a radar unit, and that would again go in the new car for $3,000. We actually got approved for a grant. Is that how you have it? As far as income for that? Kurt attends the traffic grant meetings, and I don't know if they just pulled our name out of a hat or how it worked, but we got $2,900 that we can spend sometime after January 1st. So we'll get a new radar unit for that car out of that $2,900.
Thank you, Gert.
And the last item for the law enforcement budget is taser replacement. This has been a standard procedure for us to do. Every officer is assigned a taser. They don't take them home, they put them away. So by spreading it out and having a taser for each officer, it saves on wear and tear, but still, after they get to be out of warranty, how long, 6, 7 years old, they need to be replaced. So that's sort of the
kind of on a 10-year cycle at the moment.
Continuous cycle replacement. And at the same time we're purchasing new tasers, we'll also buy the holsters and the cameras that go on them. And we buy cartridges, both for training and for on duty. Even if they don't use them, sometimes the cartridges get discharged just by dropping them, just because they're handled all the time. So that is the law enforcement budget.
Questions, anyone? Next, emergency communications, page 45.
Okay, so the first item, if you're ready, is the records management system upgrade through our group, our MPSIS group, which consists of Fitchburg, Middleton, Sun Prairie, Verona, and Monona. We share a record system, and this is sort of Sarah's area of expertise. We were required, back in 2016, the FBI announced that we had to switch from uniform crime reporting to incident-based reporting. So we're set. We've already paid half of our share. We paid $20,000. It was actually a few pennies over $20,000. And so this will be the 2nd year payment to our group for our portion of this project, which is roughly, it's a $500,000 project, but because it's based on population, our share is around $40,000. So that payment will be coming up sometime next year. And we're set to go live with that. When's that? We're getting close.
Yeah, we've been meeting at least monthly, working on things that need to be completed before they do data conversion. Once they do data conversion, we'll do some additional testing, and they're hoping for spring of 2020 to go live.
Yeah, the data conversion is the tricky part. So we've experienced it at least 2 other times just since I've been here switching over. So we usually can grab a lot of the information and the narrative reports, but it's a question of what box they put it in if you're ever doing a search in the future, so it gets a little tricky. The next item is the radio system update. It's not really a police system, but because it falls under the guise of dispatch communications, we're sort of taking the lead on it. And for new, I'm sure you guys, I mean, you've been around a couple of years, so you have a grasp of this radio system. We actually, for Monona Police, we rent space. We use the Madison 800 megahertz system. For Danechem, which is for the whole county, they're on more of a VHF system. And then Monona Fire and Public Works have their own system, which we own and have operated, and it's also, it's linked in with the Danechem system. But that system hasn't been upgraded for over 25 years. So Dan Eckloff is sort of, from our fire department, he's sort of the expert in really explaining this. But we started down the road. Last year, we had money budgeted to replace the phone lines with microwave antennas because AT&T is getting rid of copper wire as far as transmitting radio signals. So we had that money, $38,000 in the that's still in the 2019 budget.
Yeah, it's in there.
We're sort of on hold for that project until we figure out what we're doing with this radio system upgrade. It wasn't until we started talking to General Communications and our vendor that the discussions came up that it's time for the system to be upgraded. So it's talking about updating the consoles, new software, the gateways, which are, it gets, I can throw out these terms, but if you were to quiz me on some of what it all means, I'd have a tough time explaining. Dan is really our guy to do that. Analog channel, basically you're going from an old radio system to a IP, internet-based digital system, which is what we need to convert to. So if we do it separately over 3 years, the total project would be $124,100.90. If we do it all in 1 year, the project would be $101,753.90. We've saved $22,347. So out of that $105,000 that we have budgeted, that gives us a little bit of contingency above that 101. We've already got $38,000 borrowed. We could get another $5,000 probably from the Civic grant. There's some funds that could come from other sources such as water revenue, things like that. So,
Questions?
I could try to answer radio questions, but if you get too technical, I probably can't. I'm just kind of going
Yes,
with.
there's no takers.
Okay, thank you. You're very kind. Okay, and the last thing is dispatch. In dispatch, we have in our IT room, along with all the phone equipment and recording equipment, we also sort of manage the video system for the entire city. So we have $16,000 in this request this year to start replacing some of our older analog cameras. I know I've talked to Dan in the past about adding some additional cameras over at Public Works. $16,000 isn't going to fix everything. We just counted it up. I had Jaron from Landtech show me how many analog cameras. We currently have 14 of the old analog cameras now. So we need to start phasing a lot of those out and replacing them. And each camera is anywhere from $1,500 to $1,900. So this is just kind of put a little Band-Aid on of getting rid of some of the worst ones. And this, with our system, which we upgraded, was it last year? Last year we put a new system in?
Last year, 2 years ago.
2 years?
That's
Well,
2
I think it was about 2 years ago.
2.
So our system is good right now. It's still under warranty for several more years, but we're also adding new cameras at the pool and new cameras at Riverfront Park. So we have over 50 cameras on the system now. We're probably going to have like 60, 70 at some point. But we need to start phasing out some of the older analog cameras.
Anyone? Yes, I guess that's everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for getting us in early.
Next up is Ryan. Page 111.
Are the Cubs playing tonight, Wally?
They're not playing at all.
Not at all.
Brewers had a grand slam in the first inning, so they're up 5-0. Go Brew Crew.
He's just saying that because he wants money.
Yeah.
You're gonna.
It's birthday.
Alright, go ahead.
All right, hello everyone.
Hello.
So I have the first project, I have number one priority is the self-checkout machines. We're looking at replacing the 3 self-checkout machines. The current ones we have are over 7 years old. They're no longer being supported by our current vendor, Biblioteca. In fact, we've had to have one replaced repaired several times. They had to cannibalize some of their old machines that they have. And they basically told us that's not going to happen anymore. So this project would replace those 3 self-checkout machines, and we would be working with a different vendor, Envisionware, which was recently approved by the South Central Library System as a vendor that we could work with this technology. And comparing the 3 units as well as the other equipment, we'd be saving approximately 35% going with that vendor versus the current one that we have. Also to note that the current vendor, we've been having some customer service issues with them, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Envisionware will be with that.
Questions?
Is there anybody else on that vendor list other than Envisionware and Biblioteca?
No.
And sorry if I missed this, did you call references for the other company, just to see how those other libraries have enjoyed it?
They're a relatively newer company. Biblioteca's kind of had a good foothold in that sector for a while. It was a library out in Minnesota. It was working great. And all they could tell us was that they had purchased it not quite a year ago, and they've had no issues with it. I've also checked that, so we also have the book sorter machine when you enter in from the parking lot. That is also Biblioteca equipment. This equipment will work with that piece of equipment. And then when that goes down, the library will be discussing if we will be replacing it or not. If we do decide to replace it and are able to afford it, Envisionware also has a book sorter machine that they've made from scratch. And that one is about 60% less than what we paid for the original machine. So, and hopefully we'll jam less frequently.
Anyone else?
Okay. And just the other 2. What's
They're both
that?
under. Yeah.
Okay. The other 2 projects that can discuss, one is changing the lower level restrooms fully to gender neutral restrooms. We recently did replace the locks on the outside door, which you all should know because you approved it, but then this would going further and replacing the stalls and updating it a little bit. One of the countertops is starting to rot, so get that out of there. That would be $3,500. We would also look to add at least one more baby changing station down there. Currently there is 1 upstairs and 1 downstairs. This would be adding a 3rd. This would complete this, and we also see this as not only as a safety issue with those locks, but also just trying to be more current. New buildings now, as far as I can tell, new restrooms they're putting in, they're going gender neutral restrooms. It's just how we're moving towards. So we'd like to be as current as possible and offer our community a safe space. Any questions with that one?
Thank you.
And then finally, library furniture. So this is looking to replace 18 of the comfortable seating chairs on the upper level, usually like around the windows as well as the quiet reading room. These would be replacing the chairs that are original to the addition. So we're looking at about 17 years, well, 16 to 17 years. And some of them have been shown a lot of love by our community, and you can see it. And we also, in our community survey that we did for our strategic plan, something that came up as the #1 thing that we should do to improve our physical space was more comfortable seating. And so this is addressing that as well, that we should provide seating that we are interpreting that as more comfortable, meaning they are more pleasant to sit in. We can also address and maybe roll that out so we have a little bit more chairs for those that are not quite worn down as much, and so they can be there for like another year, so we can then see if all chairs are occupied. Currently, I would say the majority are occupied. Most of the time during the heavy peak hours. But if it does look like more people are sitting on, then we can look forward to replacing those chairs and finding to have more chairs. But we wouldn't know until we actually tested that out. The numbers you see here for the types of chairs is meant to be somewhat of a placeholder. These are furniture that I have identified as being pretty comfortable, aesthetically pleasing. One of them, I believe, the All Steel Rock Series, won an award in a library furniture showpiece, which I kid you not exists. That would be nice. Any questions with those? Yes.
Can the older, the used chairs be repurposed or recycled or donated?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they are not to the point where they're being held together by bubble gum and string. They do function, but I would say they are not very comfortable, especially compared to other chairs that we have up there. The bluer ones with kind of like the wooden arms, those are newer, would not be replaced with this, and definitely are more comfortable. The ones in the kind of styled fabric design are the ones that you can they're kind of smiling at you because the cushions have been sat in so often that it just they don't have much support in them. Yes, Jen.
I will say, since we're talking about chairs, the library board took a field trip to a neighboring community's library, and we tried out every chair in the library, and were unable to find one that was suitable. So chairs are important, and so.
Which library was that?
I can say because we're being recorded.
Yeah, I mean, there would have to be some research. I believe the last time those chairs, in fact, that we'd be replacing, there was a thoroughly researched.
Yes, we did a field trip to the merchandise mart in Chicago.
Yes.
It sat in many, many chairs.
What a time to be on library board.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Two of the projects are coming out of the library fund balance, is that right?
That's correct.
The last two.
And how much will that leave in the fund balance?
Well, as of now, I would say it leaves approximately
115. I have 130 right now. So.
Yeah. And then, so 115, and then again with per the policy to have 10% of the operating budget in there at all times, but that'd be the remainder of it. That is, at this point, I can't say what it'll be by the end of this year.
Right, okay, all right, thanks.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Just a few short minutes of your time is all I need.
Yeah.
I'll be out of here.
We're on page 49 this time. That one, so now it's all here.
All right.
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. All right, we'll get started. For Public Works and Utilities, first item that we have is the Monona Drive reconstruction, the last segment from Broadway to the Beltline. This is in coordination with Dane County Highway. They will be taking the lead on the project with design and construction. Our cost share for this is $434,000. With that, we have a 7% contingency. We're looking to do that in 2020.
Is that 50-50?
That is 50-50, yep.
And we really have no choice in this. They decided to do it this year.
Yeah, this is something that we talked about last year, ready to get it on the list. It takes them about a year to design it, so, and that stretch is pretty bad, just like the previous stretches that we reconstructed, so.
Yeah.
So they redesigned, or they're designing it this year, and then it's, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a terrible stretch. So.
that wasn't redone as part of the Monona Drive project?
No,
was it?
not that portion. And this will include the intersection of Monona Drive and Broadway.
Are they responsible to do all notification to adjacent property owners, or is that on us?
I'm assuming that would be them, but I'll cover that with Pam at the county.
And you mean intersection, I mean, it's not gonna reach to the other side of by like Quick Trip and that?
Yes.
So they would tear all that up and?
Yep. That's the plan.
Can they
because-
add a right turn lane on Monona Drive?
No. No, that's going south of the intersection, or north of the intersection, but, yeah, the right of way is zero right there. So,
I mean, we gotta buy that soon. It is disgusting.
yeah. I think a lot of what you see happening today is because Bridge Road is
Oh, yeah,
shut
yeah,
down, so,
yeah. It takes a good 25 minutes to get
Yeah.
from Frostwoods down.
yeah. Okay, next item.
Cut through by your house.
We have the Winnequa Road Pirate Island Bridge replacement construction. That is currently being designed by MSA. We have a total budget expense of $733,000. We are eligible for grant funding on that. $679,000 of that cost is eligible. That's through the Dane County Bridge Aid Grant, 50% qualification, or 50% reimbursement from Dane County. With that, there are 2 permanent easements that are needed for the water main offset. Water main right now currently hangs under the bridge. We're gonna be boring that under that channel. MSA is currently working on that as well. So, any questions on that one?
Is this project, or are you gonna comment on any of these other projects that we could apply for the Wisconsin transportation
Good
72
point.
million?
Yep.
pool?
I'm actually meeting with Greg at MSA. There are 4 that could qualify. I'm not sure if all of them will. We're gonna look at this one as part of that. South Winnequa Road as part of that. Capital City Bike Trail connection, and McKenna. Those are the 4 that we're gonna look into.
Okay.
The one that we feel is very strong would be the South Winnequa Road, and perhaps the Capital City Bike Trail connection. So,
What's the turnaround time for Dane County's grant? So we submit 2020 and we get a response back from them about when?
And Greg has been in communication with Dane County on this grant. We are gonna submit next year, and we should get funding back by the end of the year, I believe, next year. We have a similar grant funding option for this year's Bridge Road project. We're gonna be getting grant funding for the Yahara River Bridge reconstruction as well, so. Okay. Next item, McKenna Road reconstruction. This project initially came out in 2016, has been put on hold. We are planning to move forward with this next year. Total cost $1.746 million. We're gonna be replacing water main, some sanitary sewer main, adding storm main, curb and gutter. There will be a sidewalk component to this. We are actually having the public information meeting for this project on October 22nd. Notices have been sent out to the residents last week, and Strand will be doing a presentation at that meeting, so. Any questions on that one? Okay, moving on. We had the final engineering for South Winnequa Road improvements. This was pushed back a year for construction due to budget funding. However, this is a $20,000 placeholder to keep the project alive as far as public information meetings, meeting preparation, communication, and then final changes to project design as we would roll into 2021.
I did also add, originally we had 10 in for that, and we put in some additional money because I'd like them to take a look at this whole issue of one-way,
Right.
because I feel we need to address that, so.
At least look into it, see if it's
Yeah.
feasible or
Not that I'm planning on changing it to one-way, but
not. Right.
we need to at least do some research on it.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, next item is our annual street maintenance and repair. In the past, we've typically spent somewhere around $300,000. We're dropping that down to $58,000 for next year, so we can get some of these other projects done. $50,000 of that will be allocated to street maintenance. The other $8,000 will be allocated to sidewalk, curb and gutter repair and replacement. in 2021, I plan on requesting back to the normal 300,000 range for street maintenance.
Questions?
Okay. Next item, this is a new request item that we have for the capital budget. $75,000. This is for an ash tree removal program for street trees only. And from last fall through the winter to this spring, the ash trees that we have in the terrace have been hit hard. Last year the canopy wasn't that bad. This year we have a lot of dead trees. So we're hoping we can get between 75 and 100 trees for this amount. We're not sure because it all depends on the size versus the cost to take it down. And if it's in power lines, it costs a little bit more to take down versus trees that are not in the power lines. I see this probably being year one of a request like this. I could see coming back in 2021 with similar requests for funding for removal.
What percentage of the trees that you're planning on taking down this year have been taken down? Do you have any idea? I mean, are they like half done or?
Right now, we are done removing ash trees unless there's another request that comes in, or
Okay.
you know, hanging limb or something like that where it poses a public health hazard. I say that because our budget for removal is in the operating budget, and we are over that amount. I plan on coming in November for a capital or an operating budget amendment to bring that funding back up to meet the expense, which is why you see this year cost so high. I don't know the count, but I want to put it somewhere between probably 25 and 40 that we've removed already this year.
All right away.
All in right of way.
And do we actually remove any, or is it all Mike Johnson?
We do remove probably the mid-sized trees
Okay.
to smaller. Our crew can handle that. The larger ones where you need the bigger bucket trucks, we contract out. Anything in power lines, we contract out to Mike.
And they're done with all those?
Knock on wood, yes, for the year, unless something else comes up, storm damage or something like that.
Okay.
So,
Is there an area within Monona that you would tackle first with this, or is this just all over the city? Is there?
I would have to look at the layout that we have that was updated last year. Brad manages that GIS layer in coordination with Jeff, but there are pockets right now throughout the city. The Wallace Valerie area is one. I think, I'm not sure if Dunways on Nichols is another, but there's certain pockets throughout the city, but we're due to have another hard winter, and I just am anticipating even worse scenario next year, so.
Jen?
We have 516 ash trees in the terrace,
Right.
and $1,000 a pop, that's $500,000 we're looking at for 5 years.
And I think it was 147 that are basically need to come out now, and that could get worse over the winter, so.
You said 147?
Right, there was another sheet I had in here somewhere, I thought I had it right behind here with the numbers, but, yeah, it's, the first number was 147 that are basically ready to go. So,
We've got quite a few more in the parks too.
yeah.
If we see ones that are of concern, should we just send an email to Jeff?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, he already has a list going for removal based on what's worse, so. Okay.
Anyone else? Questions?
Okay, the next item is the right-of-way tree replacement program. This we're gonna keep at 25,000. We won't be able to keep up with replacement versus what we take down. Our crew right now removes the stumps. So we're looking at probably more than double, triple of the typical amount we grind out. So the goal right now is leave this at 25,000, and then we'll see how next year in 2021, 2022 looks. It all depends if city council wants to accelerate the tree replacement, but once we start removing the ash trees, we need to determine if the space can take more trees or not. So we'll probably know more at this time next year if we should increase that or not. So.
And I've had requests from a couple of people interested in donating to the city for the purchase of trees. So Brian is working on a policy that we're hoping to finish up within the next few weeks.
Okay.
That somebody brought up giving it like as a Christmas gift to someone.
Okay.
Jen?
I recommend we promote them.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
there are a lot of people in the community that would be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the gist would be, they're not, as part of the donation, they would not be saying, you know, I want a tree in X or Y location, or, you know, not a plaque memorializing people, but they're buying a tree in honor of someone or something, and they're basically just cutting a check for that dollar amount to that tree that will go in a sinking fund, that then we can draw from the sinking fund and purchase the new trees that we get planted throughout the city.
And we would acknowledge
Yeah.
it some, and it would be tax deductible,
Yep.
those kind of things. Doug?
So about how many trees do you think we could replace with the 25,000?
We buy the 2-inch caliper. If we plant them ourselves, we can probably spend between $250 to $300 per tree. If we have the company prepare the hole and plant them, and we buy them from them, it could be, I guess, somewhere around $750, $800, $900, somewhere in that range. It's been a while since we've actually had a company do the planting. We'd like to do that ourselves. But we do buy the smaller caliper trees for the street right of way.
Part of the issue for you is then the ongoing care of the tree, right? Because the first year, don't
The
you
first
take
couple
care
of
of the
years,
watering
yeah.
and-
The first couple of years, we will water it, especially during the drier times of summer. We have the tank for the back of the truck. We can pull right up and water right at the curb. We've done the watering bags, which don't work out quite as well. We've found that just filling up the tank and watering it right from the truck works best. And we continue to do that with all new trees that we plant. We make sure that happens every year. So, and we have the part-time staff in summer that takes care of that.
So it's a staff limitation of how many trees? Even if we get them planted, it's a limit of, we don't have the time to.
Well, for
to do
DPW,
more.
we have our part-time summer help do the
Right.
watering. I think where we would slow down is preparing the space, getting the stumps ground out, then reviewing what can go there. That's where we're gonna get bogged down. And then I guess depending if we buy in bulk or not, if we buy in bulk of 25 to 50 trees, that would probably be all we do that week. Once those are planted, then we would turn it over to the part-time crew, the mowing crew, and they would go out and take care of the watering as needed. So we usually hire three for the part-time crew.
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned if we're gonna do this, and I think Jen's probably right, you know, it's probably like we're gonna keep cutting down that for say 5 years or something like that many ash trees, that if we're only planting however many we can get for 25,000, that we're gonna, you know, we're gonna keep, the total number of trees is gonna keep going down every year. And how, you know, how we're gonna get caught back up if we can. So,
Andrew?
Some idea somebody once mentioned to me, and maybe it would work for this or parks or somewhere else, is in one of our parks or one of our spaces utilizing an area to plant a bunch of trees so that they can continue to grow, and then they would be bigger and we could caliper them out and drop them in somewhere. I'd throw that out there as an idea, because it seems like it could work, but, and you'd get bigger than a 2-inch tree as well.
We should probably hire a forester to manage that program. I don't think any city staff has that experience to do that. Nutrients wise, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, it would be no different than just planting it on the side of a road and watering it every once in a while, right? And you just have maybe 50 trees.
I mean,
in a
I don't know
plot
what
of
it
land.
takes to bring
Yeah.
a tree up from,
Yeah.
however they started, I don't know. I mean,
Oh, I'm saying buy the 2-inch, but then
Oh, and
just
then
let
just have our
them
own tree
start to
farm?
go, yeah. And then you got bigger trees to plot in certain places.
sure,
Waterman, yeah, it's underutilized.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's a number, I think Abuska has space, I think, you know,
Right.
through Meadows, there's a lot of.
That's a good
woodland park.
point. Yeah, I mean, if we buy them already established small,
Yeah.
and then just take from there. I think some of the larger cities already do something like that.
Yeah.
I've worked with some examples in Minnesota, so I'll
Yeah.
pass you on some context.
I mean, I guess generally too, it'd just be interesting to see if that actually saves us money. I mean, if it requires
Right.
us to then rent or purchase a, you know,
A
one
spade,
of those huge
yeah.
spades, yeah, then whatever, but
Right.
I don't know, it was an idea that's kind of stuck in my head that someone brought up
Well, it's
once.
something to check into.
Yeah.
What was the other park you mentioned? You said Three Meadows and.
Oh, Three Meadows, Woodland Park probably would work,
Waterman.
Ahuska, Waterman, I mean, there's certain parts of Winnequa that would work fine, or Fireman's Park. I mean, I think
Certainly
there's,
keep them well watered on
Yeah.
the west side of Winnequa.
could put it at Birch Haven, that's very well watered.
Yeah.
I like that idea, cause then you'd have a very visible, project for the community to see and, you know,
Right.
get people involved in, you know, the planting of the small trees and, you know, I think it could be a community building project.
Maywood Park. Sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions about?
Alright.
Continue.
Moving on, we have the rapid flash beacon system. This is for a system similar to what we have right out here in front of City Hall for Winnequa Road at Schluter Park. And that project cost would be right around $14,000.
I'm just curious how it's determined where those are most appropriately placed around the city.
I asked for this one.
Yeah.
Well, I know that that was said earlier, but I just didn't know if there was some, you know, is it based on requests or complaints or a traffic study,
Well,
or how
there's
does it?
probably a hazard.
Yeah.
This particular location, you've got the hill, and there's a crosswalk right at
Right.
the top of the hill, you know, slightly to the west. So, and there's a curve. So this one out here makes a lot of sense, and I think the intersection is still unsafe, but it's safer than what it once was. The other location that we have them is at, on Monona Drive by the high school. We have a set right there. And that was because of the high school students getting a safe way for those, you know, people across the street. We were looking at Broadway by, I think it was West Falcon Circle. I know the mayor inquired about that one a while ago.
You did paint cross marks.
We have crosswalk and signs there now. But that is one that we're looking at for the future. That would be a mix of a solar powered one and electrical because of the canopy that's right there. I believe this one would be a solar powered unit. The one out here is solar powered. So there has to be a hazard that, you know, that requires them to be installed. So.
I'm hoping that would just be the first step of what we do down near Schluter Beach. I'd like to get some speed tables in there.
Yep.
But that's for a
Right.
future year, I guess. Doug?
Yeah, I did have, a request, I don't remember how it came up, but, for one sort of at the bottom of the hill out here,
Healy Lane.
Healy Lane,
Mhm.
yeah, so, which, especially connecting library to the community center, pool and so
And
forth.
School, I mean, it's a pathway to school as well.
Right, yeah. So, maybe a future year.
Okay. Yeah.
Andrew?
In connection to this, has there been any discussion on restricting parking on, what would that be, the north side or east side of Winnequa, on that curve, essentially?
By
You know what I'm
Nancy's
talking,
house?
Yeah.
like Lakeside?
Yep.
Yeah.
By,
Yeah,
up by
by
Elmo.
Nancy's house,
Yeah,
yeah.
or at that
Right across
location.
from Monona Motors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where Outlook comes out.
Yeah, Outlook and then
looking south.
Midmore comes in.
Yeah, the Public Works Committee has discussed that twice in the past 7 years, I think it is. And, you know, there's that curve there, the traffic tends to go a little faster at that location. I think at one point they're asking for a stop sign for the people on Outlook on the lakeside. And the traffic cones just don't warrant it. So
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's worth exploring again. I
Right.
mean, I'm happy to bring it up
The,
and
I think
push
a
it,
speed
but-
table right there would be probably a good spot to put it.
Yeah.
Because of the speed of the traffic through there.
Yeah.
Putting a stop sign on Outlook, the numbers aren't there.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But, no parking, they kicked that
A
around.
stop sign on Winnequa for Outlook? or
No, on Outlook for Winnequa.
No.
And it's just the people who live there.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that actually requested it. But it's just a matter of stopping,
Yeah.
you know. But they also looked at no parking there and they didn't go for it along that area. So, but, that is a good location for our speed table,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, I think just as a cheap option, the no
Mhm.
parking is a good first step, because people
Right.
whip around there, and I cross the road and walk on the wrong side, because then I can see cars coming.
Right.
And, you know, my dog doesn't get hit.
We've had some turnover on the committee. I never know if they bring it back, if there's some change there. But I think one of the other, the Monona Motors, they typically park in the parking lot down there.
Yeah.
There's residential parking in that area, so if you take away that parking, would that move those cars then into the Schluter parking lot? So how many spaces are left for patrons of the park then?
Yeah.
I think that was one of the things that the committee was looking at, so.
I mean, I think it's more reasonable to say they would park then on Midmore. I mean, where they parked during the construction.
Right.
When
Yep.
the road was shut down, but,
So,
alright, I'll bring it up with them.
yep.
Do we have speed tables in this budget design form? Is that next year?
Next year. I think.
Yeah, 2021,
Okay.
but we are looking at them as part of South Winnequa Road.
South Winnequa, yeah.
Right. I just, I sort of felt like, and I talked to Dan about this today, possibly some speed tables on North Winnequa, like north of that, the point where area we were just talking about, because.
Right before you hit the curve.
Before that, yeah, 2 or 3, but between there and Monona Drive. Because even though I like using that stretch, you know, because I like driving on it, there's really no reason that I couldn't go to Nichols to get where I'm going, and.
I'm the same way. I
yeah.
always go down that stretch.
And that's sort of one of the uses for speed tables, is to discourage traffic that you don't really want there, and also obviously to slow it down, so.
How much does a speed table cost? Just rough,
To construct, I think Josh put the number out between 30 and 40
just for one?
for one, yeah. If you do it with a reconstruction project, it's just, it's
Yeah.
probably cheaper because it's tied into the overall bigger project, but to modify an intersection for construction, about that cost. Yeah. I think the intersection, or the crosswalk speed table is cheaper than an intersection, simply just because it's a shorter width.
Mm.
So. Okay, moving on to the next item, into the utilities. This would be in the water utility. We have the painting of the outside of the Whitewater Tower. This request is for engineering and bidding, total budget expense of $145,000. That would be in 2021. The 2020 cost would be $50,000. We had the inside of that water tower painted a few years ago, and that was paid for by the cell companies because of the welding damage they did putting up their systems. The outside it needs to be repainted just because it's been a long while since it was last repainted. So there's some coordination with the cell phone companies that's needed. They would have to get their equipment off temporarily. So we're at a critical moment right now, I guess. If this project gets delayed, it would bump it into a sandblast and repaint, which would drive up the cost right now. Simple repainting is what we're looking at, so.
Questions?
Would you just repaint it white?
Unless there's a different color city council wants. So. But you have
Lucky for a minute.
Got a year to decide.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know, I mean, I guess one says Monona, I don't know what you'd put on the other one, it's kind of, I don't know.
Put the bird on there.
Yeah.
Monona.
Is it on it?
Silver Eagles or something.
Silver Eagle. Okay. Next item, the water meter upgrade. I believe this is now down to half in 2020, the other half in 2021. We're looking at a total project cost for the capital budget of $311,000. And we're looking to do, where's the meters? We have that on there, number of meters.
13.
Okay, right there it is. Yep, 1,354 meters would be done in 2020, and the balance, same amount for 2021. Just for the new meters, it's $293,000. The software program in year one, $3,000. The gateway installations, we're looking at $3,000 for that. And the gateway antennas, we're looking at 2. A third one might be needed, $11,900 for that. With that, and the operating budget is going to be coming soon, with this water meter upgrade, there are some annual charges that will be in every budget moving forward. Starting out, the annual charge would be $10,192, and that will be in every future water budget. So
it's gonna actually increase that operating cost?
This will, going to the fixed-based smart meter system will increase our operating budget charges. However, the thought is that with this smart meter system and reading monthly, in addition to that, the utility clerk can essentially read the system every day. And there are alerts with the system that if your usage is, I think it's a certain percent above your normal use, we are alerted of a possible leak. So we are able to notify property owners today if they have a leak versus 3 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
Property owners with this system can download the app, they can monitor their own system, they can monitor their own usage, things like that right from an app. So the benefit in trade-off is that if we can catch a leak sooner than what we do, it'll offset that operating charge. Also, we have staff that drives by. It takes them about, I think, 2 or 3 days to read the meters, so we won't have that staff time. They will be allocated to do other work. So
Takes 2 or 3 days total for an entire year, or?
no, per quarter to read
Quarter.
the city. Yeah, and if there's follow-up readings that are needed, then that's additional money we would be saving. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think catching those leaks sooner would offset that charge. So.
Anyone else?
Okay, moving on. This one kind of goes hand in hand with the water meter replacement. This is contracted meter installation and a cross-connection survey. To get this done in a 1 or 2 year time frame, we would look to have the installation contracted out. At the same time that they are in the home, they would be completing a cross-connection survey, which is required by the DNR. NR 810 says that the inspection has to be done once every 10 years, the same cycle that you would change the water meter. So as long as they're there, we would ask them to complete this here, and then that way we can meet the DNR requirement. So the contracted installation for 1,390 meters is $120,930. The firm estimates that roughly 20% require a follow-up, so we're basing that off 278 meters. And our project cost that we're looking at for next year is $139,100.
And then it'll be the same in 2021.
The balance in 2021, yep. I did include the proposal with the budget here, so if you look through it and have questions, just feel free to contact me, email me, and I can get you an answer if you have any questions on that.
Did you say last time we installed our own, it took 8 years?
Yeah,
By
the
the
last
time
go
we
around,
replaced
it took
them
us
all.
8 years to do, so,
Tedious.
yeah. Okay, next item, looks like we're moving into stormwater. Okay, now the Gateway Green storm main improvements, this would be final engineering. This is just south of Christie Circle where we have the issue. There, it seems to be a low point where all the stormwater in the area collects after a heavier rain event. It impacts private property right there. It jumps the curb. There's a home that's in that area where basically the water gets pretty high, and I've included some of the pictures in the handout where you can see the flooding that happens. In the front yard, the picture where you see the front of the car, if you look beyond the car, that's all flooding in the street. That's how flooded out this area gets. So what we're looking to do, complete the final engineering, and the construction would take place in 2021. We're focusing on replacing the main that goes through the yards. I included a GIS drawing that shows the main between Gateway Green and Sylvan. That would be upsized. From there, we would use the overland route, the curb and gutter system, to get the water down to Pirate Island, and that's exactly what the curb and gutter system is supposed to do. There are a few driveways going south that we would rebuild the aprons because they have a negative slope on the apron, so we would build that apron up to keep the rainwater in the street at basically the same height as the curb. And then once we get back down to Pirate Island, it would go back into the pipe and into the channel. That's what's being planned for this project, so.
Can you walk us through this map, because I don't know what I'm looking at?
Okay, if you turn it this way, there's a green line.
Don't have color.
Yeah, we don't have.
Yeah, we
color.
don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. There
Oh,
is
is that this?
probably gray on your sheet then?
Between 6019 and 6104?
Yep, that's the main that we would replace.
What road is, sorry, what road is the, oh.
Yep.
Okay.
And so it's Gateway Green and then Sylvan, where that goes.
Thanks.
So we're gonna replace the water main?
No, that's the storm main that goes through there.
Storm main.
Yep, we're gonna
That makes
upsize
sense.
that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So we're gonna add more catch basins on Gateway Green to take in that water, upsize the main. On Sylvan, we're gonna daylight that, so it's gonna go from the main back into the curb and gutter, which is what it's supposed to do on Sylvan. We looked at cost of upsizing the main from this location all the way down to Pirate Island. That was over $3 million. And you wouldn't be using the curb and gutter system, which is that's exactly what it's designed to do, is move that water from this area. So, you know, the thought is, let's use what we have there to do that job. So when you know, some people might see that water coming back out of the pipe, something's wrong, but that's the intent, is for that water to daylight again and then use the curb and gutter to get back down to Pirate Island.
So next year's 900,000 we have in the budget, correct?
2021,
Yeah.
that's the estimate right now for that construction.
And there could be grant money for that, or not?
There could be grant money for that, yeah.
Okay.
So we think that enlarging that storm main that's gonna be enough to alleviate all this flooding, or like most
Yeah,
of it?
the engineers, they've spent a lot of time in this area. They've done, the first year, I want to call it preliminary engineering, but I think they call it a hydraulic analysis. And they went through all of the yards, they did some topo survey, they ran flow models of the entire basin right here. So that they've done that. They've done the preliminary engineering, which we're in right now. Basically, essentially running more flow models, running the design calculations. Like I said, they had, one of the estimates was, running new pipe all the way down.
Right.
But you're looking at a 36 to 42 inch pipe, and that project would cost over $3 million.
Yeah.
So, we went back to what's the problem here and what does it take to solve it? And once you get to Sylvan, the problem essentially goes away because the water will use the curb and gutter system to get down to Pirate Island. So it's getting the water from Gateway Green to Sylvan,
Yeah. Mhm.
and that pipe they found is undersized for that water. And when you look at Christie Circle, everything to the north, there's the hillsides to the east there. That all comes this way.
Right.
Comes down Gateway Green. They feel with upsizing this main, adding more catch basins on Sylvan to daylight that water. There is some overland route that just like it is supposed to be today, but not to the extent that the residents are seeing it. So
Mhm.
they want to utilize the overland route the way it's supposed to be used. It's gonna, it's a cheaper option, but
Right. Oh,
it,
yeah.
according to their models, it'll solve the problem.
Right.
So.
I mean, that's where the water is now going sort of through, well, part of it's going through that guy's garage, but
Yeah.
around there.
Yep.
And then it is going in the backyards and coming out on Sylvan, so when.
Right, but the with their design to upsize that main
Mhm.
and more inlets on Gateway Green and more inlets, if you will, on Sylvan.
Yeah.
They'll capture that water faster, move it faster through that pipe and daylight it faster, then use the curb and gutter to get
Yeah.
down to Pirate Island. So,
Okay.
Is it 6019 is the one who's getting flooded, or?
I think so.
I
Or
actually, I
6101.
think it's 6101
Yeah.
where it actually, yeah, it backs up that far. But he's the one that experiences it because I believe, he's got that low spot right there,
Mhm.
so.
And my neighbor's one's a lot better than 3.3 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just happy that they figured that out.
Okay.
Any other questions about that?
Okay, next item would be the REACH 64 Phase 1 Stormwater Improvement. That'd be final engineering. This is, the improvements would take place at Stonebridge Park. Mark, you mentioned you had two costs up there on your
Yeah.
screen. One is stormwater, one is park.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if those figures were right that you had on there. In any case, for the final engineering, we're looking at $100,000. That's for the engineering administration, a geotech survey. And if you'll recall, we've been looking at REACH 64 for a number of years now. And we're gonna tackle our REACH 64 in about a 16-year time frame. We get our new permit, we're gonna tackle one project with each permit reissuance. So this will be the first one. And the treatment option we're looking at would be the RSC, Regenerative Stormwater Conveyance System. The engineer, kind of made a drawing of what it could look like going through the park. And I also included another information handout from Stormwater Solutions Engineering, just to give you another idea of how we're gonna, treat the water before it goes into the lake. At the curb, we're gonna do one of our sediment removal boxes. The discharge will then be to the RSC, and then the RSC to the lake. So this would be our phase one with addressing our REACH 64 discharge issues. So
So how much is, I'm sorry, how much is Stonebridge, the construction?
225.
yeah, in 2021,
So Jake has a $500,000 in parks.
So Southern Gate, add the two
Yeah.
numbers together.
we're looking at 225 for the stormwater component of that.
Okay.
And you think we can get some grant funding for that?
There would be a portion of that project for us for stormwater grant funding. Yep.
Yeah, it's mentioned on the list.
Yep. Yeah, the very next item, Reach 64 grant application assistance, 9,000 that we're asking for. So we would be applying for the DNR Urban Non-Point Source and Stormwater Grant, the Dane County Urban Water Quality Grant, which is the big one. We've gotten that a few times now. And the Yahara Winds Phosphorus Reduction Grant. We've actually gotten all three of those in the past for our projects. So I think every project that we would do that addresses Reach 64 in the next 16 years, if the grant programs are still here, we would be applying for those grants. So.
Jen?
So after we do one of these projects, presumably we keep doing testing to make sure that we're on the right track with our reach, or, you know, given, you know, if we have some miracle happen and we do like one or two of these projects and then we actually meet it, then we potentially could stop? Or would we continue with our projects?
No, we would stop doing the projects once we reach our MS4 permit requirements. I would think that when you get a phase done, as you're planning for your next phase, you need to see what the numbers are that you have to reach. So that would be looked at with each project to see what you need to do to accomplish your permit requirements. Yeah. But once we get to what we need to remove, then we don't have to add any more projects.
I've mentioned this to Jake a number of times, and he always mentioned that we're gonna have a combined meeting, but like our Parks Board doesn't understand the full, pardon the usage of the word, reach of this Reach 64
Yeah.
needs. And the sooner that we can have that discussion, whether it's independently, whether that's as a joint Public Works, Parks, cause I think as projects start to spring up on the park side, I know there's a lot of questions as to,
Yeah.
well, why are we doing X, Y, Z? Or, you know, we have a lot of residents that are coming in and saying, why are you putting this huge rock basin in
Yeah.
Right.
our nice grassed park?
Sure.
And I think we're comfortable saying why, but I
Right.
know they don't know why. So, all that to say is, the
No,
sooner the
that's a-
better.
That's a good suggestion, considering how many parks this might eventually affect.
Yeah.
Right, and I know once we start getting into phase 2 and 3 of this, where the projects become bigger. Yeah, I guess Jake and I will get that figured out when, you know, first we have to, I guess, get it approved at this level. And then once we get it approved and we know what's gonna happen, then we can start working on a joint meeting.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, even before it is going to happen, I think it's fine to have a meeting, because we're already at the parks level talking about what do we wanna do with this park, that park?
Mhm.
What park do we put first, and I think
I'd
that
probably
would change our conversations
Right.
quite a bit.
I'd probably invite the engineers from Strand, because they've done a ton of homework on this,
Yeah.
and they know the finer details of
That,
it.
that might be better than a joint meeting, even.
True.
Six, with
Yeah.
Strand.
Right, yeah,
Make
have
sure that they're
Strand,
there.
have Strand show up at the park board.
Yeah.
I would be there. But I think hearing it from the people who've done the research on it would probably be best.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Jen, did you have?
I think it'd be great for landmarks to be included if there is a joint meeting,
True.
just because of our pagoda. I think they're feeling a little left out as to what the planning is.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanna be sure landmarks is included, and I've told Jake this too, in any planning about that park,
Yeah.
because of the pagoda, so.
I mean, as far as we've seen in the plan, it's protected, but I
Yeah.
think the landmarks committee would feel more comfortable just being involved.
Did the guy from Ayers ever come to Landmark? I mean, that would be one thing.
Yeah.
We could do is, get the guy's name from Jake, who's doing the park design.
Yeah, cause I don't know how much he's actually, I know he was at a meeting a couple of years ago when residents came, well, when the Landmarks Commission came actually, and to talk about how they thought, no, we shouldn't move the pagoda up to the road, and that kind of thing. But I don't know how much involved he has really been in any design for it. Kind of what I'm hearing is more, he's focusing more just on the regular park stuff, but and not that he would be doing the design of the pagoda, but are we gonna put a walk around it, what, you know?
Right.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting, because I know we talk a lot about the pagoda.
Yeah.
At parks. A
Right.
lot.
So at that joint meeting, would you want Strand to cover all the projects in our 16-year future, or just this one?
No, I think all of them. I mean, I think the Parks Board needs to understand the severity, and I mean, you know, Maywood Park could be a huge detention pond. They need to know that, you know, the lagoon could be tripled the size. They need.
Okay.
So I think, you know, the whole picture needs to be.
We're ready to put it out there.
I mean, I think so. The sooner you put it out there, the sooner the conversation happens. I mean, everybody says they're sustainable
Yes, let's talk
around here.
about that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there's maybe one project that I'm thinking about, maybe you don't mention, because that doesn't have to do anything with parks, but.
Right.
Right.
But at least the ones
Okay.
that
Sure.
impact park.
That makes
There's
sense.
'Cause I
different
just-
ways it can be presented. that-
Yeah, and I'm just.
Not so scary.
Again, I don't want them to get too far down the road planning something when, you know, well, you can't put a path in Maywood because, you know,
Yeah,
5 years
Right.
down the road, it might be a detention pond.
right, okay. We'll work on that. All right, next item, annual store main repair program. This has been in our capital budget for a few years now. We use this money to replace any corrugated metal pipe that has corroded. A lot of it that we've been finding is in the street. So with that, you have some small section of street that you have to replace. But it funds catch basin replacement, replacement of a manhole if needed, but we've done some small section lining, and we've done replacement of, 20 to 30 feet of storm main. So without that funding, we wouldn't be able to get a lot of that work done. So it's a good Band-Aid for us.
Questions?
Okay, next item, we're moving into the sanitary sewer. The first one would be the Industrial Drive Sanitary Sewer Interceptor Replacement Project. This has been led by the City of Madison. We did bid this out late 18, early 19, and the bids came back double of what the estimate was, so we put this on the shelf. I don't know if you recall, but I did update the City Council back then where we were at. So we're getting ready to put that back out to bid. Again, for 2020, our total budget expense is $588,500. That's off of Industrial Drive. That's the main interceptor that goes from our city to the wastewater treatment plant. And roughly 70% of that flow in that pipe is ours. That's why we have the higher cost compared to Madison. But there's a great deal of inflow and infiltration in that pipe, which we get billed for. So the goal with replacing this is getting rid of that I&I, and then upon the completion of that, MMSD has committed to take over that pipe, take over ownership. So, any questions on that?
So this 588 is our share, correct?
Yes. Yep.
And that's in addition to the 227, so the total share would be the 700 plus thousand.
Yeah, there's, I think whatever the balances of that would be lumped in with the 588,500. I'm not asking for 588,500 in addition to that.
We borrowed the money back in
okay.
2016, but we used some of the money for something else, so when we do the actual
Whatever's
borrow, it
left.
won't be net of that amount.
Okay.
There's been some engineering that they've completed that we've been billed for, so just trying to stay on top of that.
Do we know how much of that is actually still available, or
How much
is
is
there
left?
any? Yeah.
There was 197,000 left, but I might have to use it for the some other stuff that we didn't borrow for, so it might be, time everything's said and done, it might be 150,000 of it less.
So are you saying we could deduct that amount?
We
from
will
this
deduct it, when we
588?
borrow, we'll deduct that amount from the actual borrowing. So if
Is that
it's,
something we can do as part of this budget process, or if we're having to borrow 150 less, that's quite a difference in?
Let me double check with Madison to see if a bill is coming for the engineering to date, before you take all that.
yeah, we can make a note in here. So.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, next item is replacing generator ATS. It's automatic transfer switch controllers at 6 locations. The funding is requested to replace the MPAC 1500 ATS controllers The remaining units, we've already replaced a few in 2012. It's a proactive replacement due to industry failures of that controller. Some of the failures have resulted in fires. City of Madison had one. Basically, it's a powered transfer switch that takes you from street power to the generator power, and they're failing. If we approve this and allow the funding, it's a proactive approach rather than a reactive. Because if you have a reactive approach to this and you have a failure, you're going to have more costs. I think they said the City of Madison, in addition to having the cost to put the new controller in, they spent $4,500 on a rental generator just to get them through for one location. So we have 6 locations, and it's a relatively cheap cost of $18,000 for the 6. So we want to get that done before they fail for us. It's a good insurance policy.
If it's a systemic problem across this particular model, why doesn't the manufacturer offer any sort of?
Yep, they're obsolete. The components are obsolete with Kohler. So according to Total Energy, who we bring in to do our maintenance, they said it's been more of a field service issue where they've found the controllers at this age to burn up and estimate the service on a proactive level. So not all of them end up failing that way, but there are a number out there that do, and they're considered obsolete, even though we just put ours in. That's how fast that technology moves.
Especially when they catch on fire.
Yeah. So this city has spent a lot of money putting backup generators at our water wells, lift stations, key lift stations here at City Hall. So I think adding the 18,000 to take care of the 6 that we're talking here, Monona, when you look at it, to have the generators that we have, we're sitting really well compared to probably 99% of the rest of the state. It's just unheard of what this city has committed to their infrastructure. And this is a way to take care of it, I guess, for cheaper than what it could be. But if there's a power outage, the lift stations pump water from one wet well to the next, to the next, to the next on the way to the plant. And the key lift stations have backup generators. So if power goes out, we still have a way to move water, and which is very good, because otherwise it's going to back up into the basements. Our water wells, we have a way to keep our water towers filled in the event of a power failure. Prior to having all these generators installed, we have one towable generator that we would have to use at all 3 wells and at 7 lift stations. And so how do you pick where to go with that? This council, this community decided to put in generators to keep everything running. That's unheard of. It's great. That's something that the residents here and you all should be very proud and comfortable of, to have a system like that. So.
And these things are what transfers?
It transfers from street power to the generator
So
automatically, seamlessly. So someone doesn't have to come in and make that switch themselves. It happens as soon as there's a power glitch, the generator fires up and you're supported. So, okay. Moving on, engineering for sewer main improvement project. I think it was 2018 budget, we had a capital budget item for an I&I, inflow and infiltration study. We are still spending that money today. That was I think it was $50,000 back then. We've been chunking out the city, reviewing it a section at a time. And we have found areas where we have I&I. We found areas where we have separated pipe, things like that. So what's before you with this request is engineering to complete design to fix the first set of locations. So we have 50 grand here, and we're gonna target some areas in the northern part of the city. If you look further into the capital budget, you'll see that we have, you know, a project in 2021. We have more engineering coming in the future because we want to keep looking at these areas and eliminate the I&I. So this is our first step to complete the engineering to knock out some of that inflow and infiltration.
I'll just say, I think the Madison Metro Sewage District, we're getting billed for a lot of I&I, so it's creating a little strain on the sewer utility, because usage is going down, but their bills are going up, a lot of it's because of the I&I, so it's hard to.
It's not just Monona, it's pretty much happening everywhere. Every community has I&I. It's through cracked pipe, offset pipe, things like that. And the reason why it's such an issue is because it's clean water, it's clear water. It's taking up space in our sanitary sewer system. It's causing wear and tear on our pumps. It goes to the treatment plant, it goes through the treatment process where it doesn't need it. It creates wear and tear on their pumps. So the goal is if you can eliminate it in your system before you use power consumption and wear and tear on your pumps, that's why we want to tackle it. And like Mark said, we get billed for the treatment even though it's clean water. So.
What are those worst areas?
Mainly along the lake. Winnequa Road, Toniawatha, coming down into Winnequa over just to the west of City Hall here. That's the main area that we looked at first because of all the springs up in that area. We have some leaking going on over in the Underdonk area, over off Cops and Chateau. So we're that first 50 grand, we're still spending that, and we're moving on to a different section right now, but we're gonna focus on the areas along the lake first before we hit the inland areas like Gordon and Wallace. And we think the further you get away from the lake, the less your I&I, your groundwater would be, but with all the rain we've had the last 2 years, I mean, the ground is saturated, so I guess no matter where you pick, you're gonna get some I&I. But we're targeting the lake areas first.
Anyone else?
Okay, next item, the sanitary sewer repair program, similar to the stormwater. This $25,000 will get a small section lining. It'll take care of any manhole replacement or manhole repairs where we typically wouldn't have any funding in the operating budget. So again, this is a good allocation to help us out if we have a big issue out in the system. Okay. Moving on to equipment. The first item we have is the John Deere tractor replacement. We have an estimated price after trade-in of $51,200. We are looking to trade in the 2007 John Deere tractor, which is in itself a good piece of equipment, but it's undersized for what we need it, and it's not the right application for what we need it for. I believe from what the guys told me that from day one this was the wrong piece of equipment, and I'm not sure how we got it or why we got it, but it can't handle heavy loads. We have some new responsibilities coming up with removing snow down in the new riverfront area. We have angled parking. We have basically no snow storage in front of the angled parking, so every snow event that we have, we're going to be moving snow out of there. For this piece of equipment that we want to buy, we've tested out a few different models over the past few years, and what we have here is the Whacker mini loader. That's the one that we would target. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the specifications, but when we're talking a mini loader, I'm sure you've all seen the big front end loaders out there on construction sites. This thing is only 7 feet 6 inches tall, and it's 4 feet 6 inches wide. It's a small loader. We like it because it bends in the middle, and you can get in tight spaces. You can maneuver in narrow roads, so you can get this on sidewalks. You can get this in the tight areas up in the riverfront development. You can use it on bike paths, which we have now at the riverfront. It's going to be a machine that we can use for more than just snow removal. We can use it for moving down trees that we take down. But its main use is gonna be snow removal for us. So, we feel that the current model is in very good condition. We have a value that we've got from the people that we've got the whacker price from of $24,000. That's a good trade-in value for a used tractor. Like I said, it's a good tractor, but it's not the right one for us. So we're seeking your approval to replace that.
Questions, Doug?
So it sounds like you have a pretty good idea on the trade-in value. I'm just wondering if though we're, budgeting it a little too tight with that, like if the trade-in's not quite that much, or.
You had some.
Usually
Yeah.
we don't take into account the trade-in value when
No,
No,
we don't. We
but-
did it this year as an
Right.
exception.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's probably a good practice, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying to be a little conservative with it, I guess.
The, I added 3% onto the quoted price. They had it at $48,791 after the trade. So I added the 2%, or, I'm sorry, 3% on there. We have, the bucket purchase, the snow blower attachment, and the broom, $72,973, $24,000 for the trade. So there, I mean, if there is, if it is tight, I guess you could delay the broom. I mean, that's 7,000 right there that you could delay. We would definitely want the.
Well, no, I think we'd be more likely to do a budget amendment.
Okay, all right.
Did you get that, you got it from a company gave you that quote though, right?
Yeah, Mid-State Equipment. It's a hard quote. It's a hard price, and they know when we would,
okay.
when we would trade it in. I guess with this, if it does get approved, when city council approves the capital budget, I would like to get that order placed so we can hopefully get this piece of equipment right after January 1st, and we can use it this winter yet down at the riverfront. I know typically you like to wait until you do the borrowing, but
Right.
with the after trade price, around $51,200, it's a lot smaller price tag than
Right.
$1 million, but.
Do you have a plan for what you're gonna do with snow before January 1st?
We're just gonna use the equipment we have.
It's just not gonna snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the skid steer, which, when you turn that, it turns on the wheels. And we wanna try to not use that if we don't have to. The earlier snowfalls, you don't have a lot of accumulation yet, so, it's either the big loader, it's the John Deere tractor, the skid steer, that's what we'd be using.
You just have to make do with what you've got.
Yep. So, and we have the John Deere lawnmowers now that we flip over, we put the cab
sure.
on and we put the snow blower on that, so we'd be using that as well.
Andrew?
Not that we wanna get into a practice of it, but, I mean, is there any ability for us to utilize fund balance to pay for it up front and then pay back with the loan so that you get it sooner rather than later?
That's what we would do if it was ordered by the first of the year.
I would order it, if council approves this, when they approve the capital budget, I would probably order it the next day. I don't wanna order it
So
before
you'd
the
order
budget.
it like December? Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was just making sure,
Yeah.
or whenever, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was
That'd be
making sure there
fine.
wasn't a delay. I did have one other question. I know construction vehicles usually don't go this, I'm channeling Aldermore a little bit, but are there any hybrid or electric types of vehicles or construction vehicles, or?
In this class, I don't believe so.
Okay.
We haven't seen any yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we've been to, the guys have been to several trade shows. They haven't seen any models
Mhm.
for an alternative fuel for this type of equipment. You're starting to see it on some of the bigger trucks now, but not the special equipment, not yet, so.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, last item is the sewer camera purchase. Seeking $6,500 for that. Right now, when we need to look into a main or a culvert or a manhole, Where we have a problem, we rent this very piece of equipment. And, you know, it's probably, I want to say 6 to 8 times a year where we would have to grab the camera and look into a pipe. Rather than run to the rental shop every time that we do this, we just think it's in our best interest to have our own. It can be used in the sanitary sewer and in the storm sewer system. This is not for mainline televising, this is just for small section viewing, if you will, just to see the extent of the problem, to see what we need to do our job. If we need 30 feet of pipe or 40 feet of pipe, that's basically what we would use it for, so we don't have to rent anymore.
Questions, Molly?
Obviously, there's an accessibility and an inconvenience to renting, but what typically is the cost per use for the camera when you rent it?
I'm gonna guess here, just because I don't know. Jeff handles those invoices, but I would put it at probably between $100 and $150. But that's just for the rental. Then you're also looking at cleanup time, you're looking at travel time, there and back. So that does add up. Probably within a 2 or 3 year time frame, you could pay that back. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dan? Thank you.
Thank you. I went over my 5-minute that I said I was gonna take.
I'm surprised.
All right, Brad.
How do you follow that up?
Quick, short and sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
No, not Brad.
What?
Oh,
So you only get 10 minutes, right?
page 25 to start.
What's the first one on the agenda? HVAC or LEDs? HVAC?
So his description, we broke them out before. Look at his descriptions on page 27. We broke that out as 4 separate items, but it's really part of the one note. The one description on page 27. Go ahead.
So this would be, if you want to call it phase 2 of the HVAC improvements for City Hall, the community center, and the library. This includes some carryover funds from, leftover funds from the project from this year, phase 1, which we will have final billing in the next week. We're just wrapping that project up. The project includes a complete, essentially, revamp of our current HVAC software system, the system that controls all of the thermostats, all of the air handling units and the boiler system and air conditioning units as well.
For all 3 buildings?
For all 3, yep. We can leave the thermostats in place, we can leave all of the components that are already tied in to the current system, so the actual mechanical or physical components, but we have to replace the actual software. The software we have right now is completely obsolete, it's no longer being updated. It works off of a Java platform, which gives its own issues all in itself. We cannot use an outside login to log into it, so I have to come here if there's ever any issues with the HVAC system. So for instance, tonight I had to turn the heat up because it was cold in here. I would have to come all the way from Stoughton here, go log in at my computer at my desk to change the temp 2 degrees. Or something like that. Or find out that, you know, somebody's complaining it's too cold, come all the way in, find out they're just too cold, nothing's wrong with the system, turn the degrees up a couple degrees to make them more comfortable, go all the way back home. That is an issue for a couple reasons, obviously. So we would like to get that completed this next year. The other benefit of that is that it ties in the library. The library is not currently under the same system control as the City Hall and the community center. So when I go on our programming, I can see here in all the rooms and what's going on and all the components. I can see the community center, but I can't get into the library. I'd have to actually go over to the library, get into the building, go into their room, which is also locked. So I don't have a key for that, and I don't have a fob for it either. So that in itself also presents an issue. So we would like to get that taken care of. That's a good portion of this next year's project. Another component is a mechanical component. The rooftop unit, the largest one at the library, during our inspections this year, found that it was only operating at approximately 71% of its total capacity. So it's effectively working 71% of what it should be working at. So it gives only 71% of the airflow, it gives only 71% of the total cooling, it gives 71% of the total heating, which is the biggest unit and affects the most square footage in the library. And it also happens to be the unit that affects the areas where people complain about the most, where it's either too hot, too muggy, or it's too cold. This does not include the downstairs, though, the municipal room. That's for a future date.
That's a lot of complaints on that.
Yeah. This would service the areas of the offices, so the children's librarian's office, Sally and Ryan's office, the front desk, the main children's library, the teen library, and there's one more room, like one of the bathrooms.
Oh.
What's that?
I thought it was a quiet room.
Choir room?
Quiet.
Quiet room. No, not the quiet room, no. With the fireplace in it? No.
Yeah.
So that unit is functioning correctly. It's just southwest facing and it gets very hot and muggy. And the doors are always closed because it's a quiet room, so there's no circulation of air in there. So that's for a future date as well. I marked in my sheet, I'm not sure whether it's in there, but there's $18,000 for duct cleaning here at City Hall. It's something that, as far as I know about, has never been done, which is concerning for a lot of different reasons. You can change filters in the system. Filters only trap so much in terms of particles, and only certain filters fit our system. So we can't get like the best HEPA filters. So the air quality in the City Hall could be prone to a lot of different nasty stuff.
That's a 2020 expense, or 2019 expense.
Yeah, we want to do that this year, but we may have to move it to next year for another.
But you have money for it.
Yep.
Right, so it's not, yeah.
Well, I want to bring something else up that's come up since then. We found out that our hot water heating system here at City Hall is tied to our boiler system, and it's causing our boiler system to fail. It's causing unnecessary wear and tear on one specific boiler that's hooked up to it. Currently, our boiler system provides not only hot water heat to the air handlers, but it provides hot water supply to the building. And when it's not being called for, or we don't need it, it's still running. And there's no way to shut it off, because it's a constant volume. So it just pumps and pumps and pumps, which is making the boiler pump as though it was a hot water heater. And that's not how it's designed to work. It's designed to work at peak capacity. It's on for a given amount of time, it reaches its temp, shuts off for a while, then it'll kick on again, and it'll cycle between boiler 1, then this one will go off for rest for a couple days, boiler 2 will run, it'll rest for a couple days, boiler 1 will run. Right now, boiler 1 is running all the time.
And this has been going on for like 60 years?
No, this has been going on since when we did the environmental community block grant, and they did the facility study, and they updated the boiler system here, and then they did these controls.
Like 2010 or something.
Yeah,
like
2012,
that.
I think.
2012.
Yeah. So.
Oh.
So for
what's
about
the
8
fix?
years, and we've replaced the heat exchanger and other components in that one particular boiler, and so we shouldn't be doing that in the first 8 years.
No. What's the fix?
There's two things we can do. We can do a bypass so that the boiler isn't running constantly. The hot water is getting pumped through the system, and it's hot enough to supply all the needs that the City Hall needs, and so the boiler doesn't turn on. Or we can disconnect it completely and put in a commercial sized hot water heater, which is recommended.
And how much is that?
They gave me a quote of about $12,000 for engineering and 10 to 15 for the installation. So in total,
So that's
somewhere near 25 to 27,000. We have the budget to do it this year. I would recommend we do it immediately if at all possible. I'm waiting on a final task order from Strand.
So that would,
Eat up.
what money, that would eat up some of the money that we
Yep.
allocated for
Yep.
60,000 remaining, some of that, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so if you'd probably just estimate taking 15,000 out of the construction budget of the 60,000 that we estimated to remain, and probably approximately 15,000 out of the engineering budget of the 50,000 we thought would remain. So
We can get you a number what that is, because we gotta go through the final numbers.
yeah.
We can get that final number.
we got to get final billing from the current project.
Yeah. Had we included what the dollar that was remaining, I know we
Include
talked about this, but I
50,000
can't
of it.
remember. Was that included in this 282?
Yes, 50,000 was subtracted out.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we really probably need to increase this 282.
So we need, yeah, we'll have to sit down, figure that number out, and let everybody know.
We may still be able to fit it.
I think we might be able to fit it, because I thought we talked about
Yeah.
we had some money.
What I'm afraid of is that we won't be able to do the duct cleaning this year. It may be something that we get to next fall after next year's project, and if we have funds left over, we can do it at that time, or potentially it comes out of there's a facilities improvements budget or whatever. It's a capital, I think, so it may be able to come out of that too. So. I believe that's it for HVAC related projects for next year. 2021, we only budgeted for engineering, correct? In that year?
Yeah.
So we pushed, in terms of the 5-year project budget proposal that I gave last year, we pushed everything due to the limited amount of capital funds available and the lack of a priority to do them, because we found out that we had less to work on with this project this year than we assumed we would. So some of these are fairly large capital investments. So we wanted to push them down the road a year, see how everything's working after these improvements, and then just do engineering if it's necessary.
So are we already able to tell a difference from all that balancing work that we did earlier this year?
Yeah, there's much better airflow in some spaces that weren't getting it, especially downstairs in the fire department bunk room, and in the fire department, if you want to call it their living room, their TV room. It was pretty stagnant down there. It was always humid. It was kind of, the air didn't smell good. It smelled mildewy. So that improved a lot. Leah's office was like a tornado. That improved immensely. So I have more airflow in my office, which I had none before. And so yeah, it's done what we hoped it would do.
And we're no longer heating the dead space above the ceiling in the form room?
Yep. Yep. We're no longer heating the pipes above the tile ceiling, and yeah. There's two, for any of you that didn't know, there's two 6-inch holes in the ductwork that were just blowing air into the ceiling. So basically, somewhere around 60% of the air was in the ceiling, and the 40% was going to the forum room. So in the library.
Yeah.
But that was that's the benefit of doing a balancing test and a thorough inspection.
Yeah.
So.
All right, any questions about that? Move on to LED.
So the LED, if you want to call this phase 3, the last major facility left to upgrade lighting at is the Public Works Garage. Arguably, outside of the library, this probably is the worst facility in terms of current lighting levels, and just the technology that's there. It doesn't work very well for what they need. Based on, these pictures kind of give an example. They're kind of grainy, but I apologize for that.
It's okay, we don't have them.
Oh, you don't have them? Oh, okay, so I had some photos, I snapped some when I was there in broad daylight in the middle of the day, and lights are located directly above large vehicles, right in the middle, where it has no light shed basically at all in between. Motion sensors are located in locations that anybody working on the vehicles or around the vehicles, the lights will turn off intermittently, and so they'll have to walk out from under, from on top of the cab, what have you, to the middle of the garage if you've been there, and then the lights will kick back on. Then they have to try and quick do their work, and hopefully the lights don't kick off again before they have to get out and go turn it back on. These are still fluorescent lighting. Fluorescents have ballasts in them. So if these lights are about 25 feet off the ground, every time a ballast goes out or a light bulb burns out, they have to bring a man lift in, move a truck out of the way, put somebody in it, put all their safety gear on, turn off all the switches so then it's pitch black again, lift them up, change out the light bulb, clean off the off the fixture, and then come back down, test it. Hopefully everything works again, and then they have to do that over and over and over and over and over in a given year. So every year, either an entire fixture or a bulb or two bulbs per fixture will burn out. Takes anywhere between 1 to 4 hours, depending on what they have to do to the light, per light, or per fixture, if you want to say that. So it racks up in a given year. It's just a pain. The guys aren't electricians. They don't want to be doing this all the time. If we switch to LED lighting, basically we won't have to worry about this at all. The lights last anywhere from 5 to 10 times longer than fluorescents do. They don't have ballasts. They provide a better light level. They have better fixtures now with better lenses where you can direct the light in a specific way to a specific space. So if the alignment of the vehicles stay the way they are, we can move the lights to a better location. We can put better sensors in better locations, and they'll have a safer space and a more efficient space to work in. And at the same time, save a lot of money. So.
Questions, anyone? Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, IT. Oh, sorry, Mark, sorry. 22 it should be, or?
Yeah, 21 and 22. Yeah.
So we tried to keep our IT budget a little lower this year. We don't have any major projects, no major server upgrades or anything like that. So basically sort of the two biggest issues for IT this year, starting in January, Microsoft is no longer going to support Windows 7. We do have quite a few computers that are still on Windows 7. So anything that is currently running Windows 7 will either need to be upgraded or just replaced altogether. Most of those computers that are on Windows 7 are old enough that it just makes sense to replace them as opposed to upgrading them. So in the 2019 capital budget, for instance, I think we spent about $5,000 on computer upgrades. We're looking at more like $15,000 for next year, just really because of that Windows 7 issue. So added kind of an additional 10 computers that we need to upgrade. The other thing that we've changed up a little bit in this year's budget is in the past, we've always used capital budget funds to purchase the public computers at the library. However, we haven't purchased them through we haven't purchased them as part of the IT budget. They were purchased as part of the library's capital budget. And we didn't have any of those library public computers on our computer replacement schedule, which looks like this. I have every computer in the city cataloged on here, who uses it, how we categorize that user, are they a high-level user or a low-level user, and when we need to replace it. So I think in the last couple of years, Ryan has sort of scrambled because they didn't really have a replacement schedule like this to find money, get grant money, things like that, to replace really old computers. And they have some pretty old computers over there. So we decided to add all of the library's public computers. There's about a little over 20 of them, not including public laptops, to this computer replacement schedule, and then replace them as part of the IT capital budget, as opposed to the library capital budget. That'll just be a better way to keep track of what needs to be replaced. If we have, you know, managers coming and going, we'll have another place that that's all tracked from. So we're looking to replace 4 desktops and 2 laptops for the library next year. We will actually purchase those still through the South Central Library System because they have to put all their own programs and all that kind of stuff on it. We get a better rate through the South Central Library System. So that's going to be almost an additional $5,000 in computers from what we usually purchase. So the library also needs a new printer scanner in their workroom, and the current printer scanner that they have in their workroom, they're going to move into to be the public printer scanner. I think Ryan didn't think he was going to need that when he put together his library budget, and then of course the public printer scanner died, and so his library report passed his budget, so we just decided let's put his printer and scanner in this budget. So that's probably the other biggest purchase that we're looking at, is probably close to $6,000 to replace that. We're looking at actually getting a projector in this room to supplement or offset this television, because when we have meetings and things in here, it can be pretty hard to see on this screen. So we're looking at buying a $1,500 projector that would use that screen and make meetings in here a little bit easier, plug laptops into it, and make presentations a little easier. Park and Rec needs a couple new phones. They have such a high call volume there in the summer that this year they actually had a seasonal that was sharing the little office that Jessica, our office assistant, is, so there were 2 of them crammed in there, but they still only had 1 phone. And I don't know if you've been down there lately, but Missy and Jensen, who's our after-school coordinator, have actually moved into Jake's office because they needed more room and more space and to be more accessible to the front desk. And Jake has moved into Missy's old office. So we need another phone to accommodate that whole switch. So, because Jensen previously had a phone in the workroom, which needs to stay there. So, and then Will needs a new switch that has more ports for the community media room at the library. So those are the major changes. So pretty doable, I think. IT budget for this year is still over $30,000.
Are you going to check, in terms of that printer, I know you're gonna look into what Diana got.
Yeah,
such a
Diane,
price.
I estimated on the high side for this printer, but Diane got a really amazing deal from Gordon Flesch on one that I think would work just as well for the library. So that's sort of a placeholder price, but I think we can get that down quite a bit.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? I guess I'm sorry you had to sit here through all this.
I'm doing minutes, so
Oh.
I know you all thought I was just there
okay.
doing Facebook or something, but I'm really wasn't.
All right.
I thought you were watching the Brewers game.
Andy thought so.
And then lastly, I'll just talk briefly about the anti-idling pilot program. So that was something that Alder Moore just talked a little bit about earlier this spring. And there was an expo at the Alliant Energy Center with a number of vendors in the kind of electric hybrid vehicle realm that came to give various presentations. And there was a vendor out of California that provides a technology that you can add as a retrofit to existing non-hybrid vehicles to allow them to turn on to electric power so they don't have to idle the engine full-time. I've talked to that vendor out of California. It's ballpark about $4,000 to do a retrofit, maybe a little bit more depending on the battery technology that they need. So we'd be looking at doing a pilot with 1 vehicle just to see how it is. We'd be looking at doing a cruiser, police cruiser next year, one of the ones that still has some life left in it. See how that works before we make a larger investment in that type of technology for some of our older fleet. There are, I've had some conversations with the Madison fleet director. There are 2 other firms that he's aware of that do similar things, so I will reach out to them and get a sense of how their pricing is relative to this outfit out of California. I would envision this would be something we would bid out anyway, so we would still get, you know, lowest cost bidder. But at least for budgeting purposes, I wanted to put something that I thought was least reasonable for the budget. Any questions?
Jen?
Does Matt use this?
This particular vendor, I'm not sure if they the vendor that I talked to was Anti-Grip Technologies. They do use it in a couple of their vehicles, but they are, they buy at such a larger bulk vehicle-wise than we do, that they're starting to transition out their fleet for all hybrid or electric. They're just a bit ahead of the curve than we are, getting economies of scale. But yes, they do have a couple of their vehicles that have this.
Wally knows this is happening.
I've talked to Wally about it.
Anyone else?
So the hybrid vehicles that we have bought, those already have the.
Those have not this exact technology, but a similar technology where they're not running the engine, producing the CO2.
Right.
Yeah. So this would just be for our older fleet till that gets transitioned out.
Anyone else? Did anyone, are we done with what we were gonna talk about tonight?
Yes.
Did anyone have any questions for me about last week's presentation? We talked about what, fire department, parks, and senior center?
I guess oh, sorry.
I said I didn't have any.
Oh, just, we're keeping the conversation alive. As a representative from the Senior Citizens Committee, I understand how pressed for space the senior center is. And, at our last meeting, and then, hearing Jake talk about it, they are just, and I think the senior center understands that is it called the community room upstairs, was sort of on loan to them from the Parks Department. But that space is now being taken, they're a place where they held classes for seniors is now being taken away for the after school and summer programming for Monona youth. And they're flexible about it, but I think one thing as we await potential future city center reconstruction or facility improvements, community partnerships, I think they're looking for spaces where that are accessible, close by, so that it's not too much of an inconvenience for people who are doing those classes to relocate if need be.
Are you talking about mainly the exercise classes?
Mainly the exercise classes, yes. I think generally they are very pressed for space,
Right.
just because it is such a small space down there. But so I guess I would just put that out as, I don't think that the senior center is always necessarily engaged in those conversations. And I think that it needs to be more of a global community center, senior center conversation when space is repurposed. But I also think, just if people have ideas about, as I said, community partnerships, or I don't know if the city, what works as far as like renting a space on behalf of the senior center for them to use for classes, or how something like that might work. But if people have ideas or know spaces that would be suitable, that could work for things like that would be accessible again to seniors and close by, welcome and open to suggestions.
Yeah, I think we need to figure out, for instance, that the big room isn't used during the day for the daycare, during the school year.
Right.
I'm not sure, I think we should have a discussion with Jake first and Diane to see what their needs are and things. I know, there is, and I don't know how useful it is, I've mentioned this to Diane, part of the reason I put money for the municipal room, replacing the tables and things, is to make that space more usable. And you can put all the tables to the side, stack the chairs, and you've got a fairly large open space in the middle. I don't know if they can do any of the exercise stuff there. I don't think I know the forum room suggested it, I don't think that's too, with the stairs and things, that's too helpful.
We did discuss the municipal room and thought about, we didn't know, especially in the summertime, if kids are gonna be at the community center, if like gymnasium space at the schools would be available, but I don't know with security and access,
Could
how
be.
that, But just, you know, I guess we're seeking solutions.
Yeah, especially
so.
because like at Winnequa, I think they can shut off the rest of the
Well, and
school
that's
and go
we-
in the back door there. They
Right.
used to have gym stuff there on Saturdays all the time.
One of the other suggestions someone made to me was St. Stephen's, if that was a possibility,
Okay.
where you could use some space there, whether or not. doing
Like the
their
room
own-
where they do the voting.
Yeah, so
It's a
I
huge
will reach
space.
out to contact her.
She's using some space at the Methodist church, isn't she?
Yes, I think through Mark Buffett, there's that connection with that whole group. They
Yeah.
do like the sewing circle there, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just putting it out there.
Yeah, I guess I get that there's a problem. I guess I'd like to see a list of what the
Sure.
What the
events
con- what the
are that
conflicts
are
are.
a problem, and then, you know, we're gonna kind of have to go down the list and probably different solutions for different events.
Great.
Yeah, I wish we could do a community center and a public safety building all at one time, but unfortunately,
Yeah, well, thank you, that's helpful.
yeah.
So the police office furniture you took out, is that because of the anticipated replacement of the?
Partly at the public safety building, and I also suggested that they check at SWAP, because you can get some pretty good deals in the interim out there. You know, the old UW
Right, yeah.
equipment, so yeah, I took it out because of that. I'm assuming if we get a new building, we'll be talking about
Right, yeah.
at least some new furniture.
The last time I was at Swap, and it's been a few years, so it wasn't, there wasn't a whole lot of really anything very good there. I just know it's
I
something
think it just
always-
really varies depending on the day you're there.
I'm sure.
You can
He's requested the office furniture money, it's been taken out of budgets, like, it's kind of an annual right now. He asked for it, it's taken out. So, I haven't been back there lately to look at what, you know, what they have.
Anything else? Mark, do you know when you would like budget amendments by?
Yes, since there's no meeting next week.
We'll have first read will be at the October 6th meeting.
So I was looking at,
So,
we have to have the packet go out like Thursday, it's kind of what we usually shoot for, so if it's possible, have them by Wednesday, then we can get in the packet.
it'd be like the 2nd.
Yeah. I know it's the first reads, I know there's some that come for the second read, they don't come in the first read, but if they're gonna be on the first read, we'd like them preferably by Wednesday if possible, the 2nd.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Comments? Mark?
No.
Molly, did you? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned, thank you all.